You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.
Well, good morning. What's happening out there, everybody? Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you live from Flyover, also known as lovely Fredericksburg. Wanted to follow up a little bit about an announcement I made yesterday regarding the restart of Jade Helm. Yeah, that's right. It's coming back, and it is way under the radar. And guess what? It's happening right here in this town, Fredericksburg. Now, it hasn't been completely confirmed because some city official has to give their pontiff-like approval over the whole thing. But the plan is for soldiers to come in from Fort Bragg in North Carolina and set up a Jade Helm training exercise here in our lovely little town, which would take place both on public and private property. Now, how do you think the private property owners feel about that? And more to the point, do they have any say? Oh, and that's a very interesting question about who owns their property now, doesn't it? Or isn't it? It's an interesting question. I'll find out more about that. And it's supposed to happen, it's a wide period, sometime either from the middle part of June to early July, something like that. I'll be going to a city council meeting on Monday night to discuss the fluoride issue. We're starting to organize here a little bit. That's a very interesting kind of moment for me. I was in Austin for 5 years, and basically I felt like I was staying in a hotel for about 5 years. And now here I am in this little town, and already I'm engaged in what might be a very interesting experience around keeping the city here from upping its fluoride count, because we already have naturally occurring fluoride in the water. Why do we need more? Is somebody greedy? Somebody getting a payoff? Is somebody just completely clueless and out to lunch? Or is there a more malevolent undercurrent that's running through this whole thing? Perhaps it's a combination of all three. I don't know, but I'm sticking my toes in the water. And I really hope that this could actually lead and grow to a kind of a larger coalition in this place where, you know, quality of life can actually be, at the very least, engaged in by the public. And I really feel like that's where we need to put our energy. Everything is so out there now. And look, I'm in the out there game too. I look around, I see what's happening. Some things I'll agree with, some things I don't. I said a lot yesterday that feels like more people were in agreement with than not, versus the day before where it was complete disagreement. And I'm going to return to the scene of those crimes, theoretically. Today is what I'm going to talk a little bit more about Tommy Robinson, a little bit more about Roseanne, and why we place such a high emphasis or strong emphasis on people like Tommy and Roseanne. And I'm going to get into that, and everybody has kind of some skin in the game with that, and even I do as well, and I have had as well. But I've had my cherry pop a long time ago. Sorry for the vernacular, but it's true. When I began to look at, like, I got to say, if you have not read Inside the TLC by Dave McGowan, the late, great Dave McGowan, I highly recommend it. Dave, I've heard people say that Dave is on the inside and he was also MIC. I mean, I don't, why don't we just say everybody's a spook in some ways, right? In some ways we kind of are. But that's where I'm not going. Dave's stuff is revelatory. The research is brilliant and thorough and speaks for itself. And really the whole piece here is about the 1960s and the music scene that comes out of Los Angeles, the Laurel Canyon, San Francisco to a large extent as well, and who the people were behind it, and especially the quote-unquote stars. And when he gets into the background of people like John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas, or Stephen Stills, or David Crosby, or Roger McGuinn, Frank Zappa, Jim Morrison, and they all wind up with these very unusual connections with the military-industrial complex and extremely wealthy families. And when I read Inside the TLC, I was already slightly jaundiced around this whole thing that we could have culture heroes that can save us from the chains and the shackles of our bondage and servitude. But when I read that, I was like, you know what? You got to kill them all. You got to kill all your idols. Kill them all. Look, even if you're into like me, right? Whatever. I'm just a guy doing the podcast. I'm human. And we will ultimately, every one of us will ultimately let you down to some degree. I did it 2 days ago. Unsubscribed. My subscriptions dropped. I lost probably about 30 people. If you can, trust and count on the YouTube stuff, right? So I performed a role. I let somebody down. It's like, I'm unsubscribing. You're a backstabber. That's just the way it is, right? This is how it goes. Can't please everybody. And, ultimately we put our full faith and credit in someone that will let us down. Unless, of course, you're just drinking some Kool-Aid and you just continue to miss the obvious, in which case there's not much I can do for you or anybody else. Sorry. So we're going to talk more today about Tommy Robinson and Roseanne and the cult of celebrity, to be quite honest with you. And I'm going to throw some astrology with them as well, if you're into that sort of thing. And I know some of you are. So anyway, I'm going to get down on the boots in the ground here and see if we can make a bit of a difference while all this is going on out in the world, while we're all debating whether or not Tommy Robinson, and again, I just had to bring it up because it's part of my thing, and while we're all debating this and free speech and blah 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 blah, free speech is very important. Don't get me wrong, I'm an advocate of free speech. What Tommy Robinson did was not free speech. Was not free speech. So he violated a certain code. We went over this yesterday. And people, well-meaning, I had a comment. This guy's like, and I appreciate this comment. He's like, I agree with you up to a point, but here's the thing. Tommy Robinson has been bringing attention to the rapes that have been happening. He's the only one doing it. Fair enough. Fair enough. If that's what Tommy Robinson's MO is now, and that's what he wants to do, that's fine. That's fine. Right? But the way that he did it put himself in that case, especially the case in jeopardy, which is why he's in prison. So if Tommy wants to continue to do that and bring attention to it, and that is his truth crusade, then more power to Tommy. Okay? More power. But just, I had to give you background. I had to share with you the big picture, at least according to me, and who he is and kind of the cadre that he's a part of. And you need to understand that. At least I think you do. And I needed to. You have to watch out for gatekeepers. Because we're living in a time where people are waking up, and it's real simple. Like when you're waking up, you're in a state of vulnerability. You are in a metamorphic state. You are going from one state of being to another state of being. So the awakening process is metamorphic. It's just like being in a chrysalis. And as you're in this metamorphic state, there are people who've been playing this game for years. I mean, go back to the French Revolution. What do you think was happening then? People were sitting around going, shit, we've got some issues here. These things called taxes, and coming off the heels of the American Revolution. And it's like, Viva France, Viva Liberté. So the French Revolution was completely staged. You have people like Rousseau fanning the flames, Robespierre. Anyway, what happened was they got the public all riled up, and they brought out the guillotines, and they started slicing the heads off the aristocrats. Oh, the people loved it. Oh my God. Oh, they're probably taking the blood of the aristocrats and smearing it all over their bodies. Oh my God, this is so good, right? I loved it. Well, guess what? That was staged. It was staged by the House of the Red Shield. Why? Because they got rid of a lot of their competition. That was aristocracy. That was royalty. Not to some extent, it was royalty. A lot of it was aristocracy, and they had resources. They had land, they had resources. Who do you think got those resources? Where do you think all that stuff went? So the French Revolution was in essence a false awakening. And to some extent, even the Bolshevik Revolution. The Bolshevik Revolution it was nuts. Totally nuts. 1% of the population overthrew the country. Totally nuts. You look back in the French, that's why the Bolshevik Revolution is kind of important. Not important in the sense that it brought in a golden new age and a new dawn for the proletariat and the worker. No, it was important in the fact that you have 1% of the population with a whole lot of banker money and a whole lot of support from the West, and look what happens. They turned an entire country, and ultimately killing off the Romanov dynasty and all that stuff. We know all that, right? So when you're in the awakening process, it is metamorphic. And there are people that are waiting there as you awaken to guide you. It's like when you go into a parking lot, right? And it's at the airport. You got the guy with the flag. He's going this way. And you go that way. And you got another guy with the flag goes this way. Then you take a left. And then you got another guy with the flag this way down the aisle. And there you go. You're parked. What happened from start to finish? You were guided along every step of the way. Now, I guess the metaphor would be, well, at least you got a safe parked car. Okay, fine. It's just a metaphor. So we're in a metamorphic state. People are awakening. I would say, yes, this is a great awakening. Yes, people are swallowing the red pill. But again, you have to be careful. You've got to be really, really, it's the D word, discerning about who and what and how the information is being shared and how you're being played. So this gets back to at least the topic of today's show, which is Tommy Robinson and Roseanne Barr as culture heroes. And why do we need them? And why we're so hungry for them. It feels like people have been in a desert for a very long time. We have been in our own version of wandering, right, for 40 days and 40 nights. The metaphorical version of that. And our spirit and our souls and our hearts are hungry, really hungry. And we're hungry for truth. We've been eating shit, synthetic, modified versions of the truth for years. We want to sit down and have a really, really great meal with really great organic ingredients. And I actually eat meat. I'm not afraid to say that. So I would throw in grass-fed meat, right? Whatever that version is for you, we all want to sit down at that table and we want to have that meal because it feeds us. It feeds us in a really deep way that, say, a crap meal from some other place may feed us momentarily, but we're hungry 2-3 hours later. Why? Because there are additives in that food that make you hungry, so you want to go back and get some more. You know the story. So we want that meal. We want that meal. So people are hungry for this. We've been in the wilderness, the desert of our experience for a long time. Even with all these things around us, all of our trappings, all of our TV and our movies and our music and our clothes and our drugs, all that stuff ultimately is not fulfilling for us. It may be just temporarily okay, but we're all craving something deeper, which is why this is taking place. So as we are moving kind of out of this wilderness place and wanting to sit down and wanting to have that great meal that's going to really, really feed us, which is truth. There's tricksters out there. There's tricksters. There's phantasms. There's doppelgangers. There's all kinds of, this is like a spiritual test. This is a spiritual test for humanity. And are we going to pass or fail? Like the fail would be to vest our interest into people like Tommy Robinson and Roseanne Barr. That's a fail. And and I'm going to focus on Roseanne here for just a second because I talked about her. Now the update is that she was up at 2 a.m. on Ambien. Roseanne Barr is a mess. She's a mess. That doesn't mean that you can't have some heart or try to break out of your shell or have some inherent kind of peace inside of you that can't, grasp for quote unquote the golden ring or have a moment of clarity, have a moment of truth. I mean, look at Network and Howard Beale in Network. I mean, he's totally fucked up. But all of a sudden, he has this moment of clarity and this moment of truth. And, he's a prophet. He's a prophet for the television era, television age. Can that happen? Yes, sure. Why not? But here's Roseanne. She's up at 2 o'clock in the morning, popping Ambien. She can't sleep. And we have those moments. We live in a time and a period where it can be really hard to sleep, especially with all the 4G, soon to be 5G, and all of our smart appliances and our cell phones and our routers. I mean, that in and of itself makes it difficult. And you throw on top of it the stress and the strain of everyday life and the bills you have to pay and all that stuff. And if you have relatives who are sick or a relationship that's, not doing so well, I mean, all these things factor into, how we live our lives and how we get our rest and all that stuff. So it's not always easy to sleep, but, there's also, Roseanne's got a very tricky past. Very, very tricky past. There are rumors, and have been for a long time, that her marriage to Tom Arnold, which was totally bizarre, that Tom Arnold was her handler. And so that would mean that Roseanne Barr is MK ultrified. You know what's interesting about Roseanne Barr? She was born in Salt Lake City. Wow, that's really interesting. Because Roseanne Barr, again, happens to be Jewish. But she's born in Salt Lake City. It's like growing up Jewish in Salt Lake City. Interesting. Well, okay, this is a topic for another show. Maybe I'll do this on one of the Friday Forecasts. But I was looking at the connection between Judaism and Mormonism, and they're a lot closer than you think. Joseph Smith was a heavy, heavy, heavy investor in the Kabbalah, which helped him start Mormonism and the Book of Mormon. I'll get into that someday. One of the Friday Forecasts coming up. So it's not too far afield, to be quite honest with you. So I always felt like there was something really, really off about Roseanne, and that there was this sense that she was, damaged, wounded, controlled. And she's talked about being MK Ultra, and she's kind of, one of these people that if that's the case, and she's trying to break out of her shell, if that's the case. She's talked about it before. And I think it's really fascinating in that she was really at the height of her popularity with the Roseanne show, which I never watched. Like, that was the time when I started to tune out the TV. Like the 80s, I can't even tell you most of the TV shows. The only thing I know about the 80s TV shows is what I've read about them from the past. And they were always on in the background at my parents' house. They were big into Simon and Simon. That was their show. Simon and Simon and a Tom Selleck show. He was in Hawaii. Those were their shows. I checked out TV in the 80s. Anyway, Roseanne was a part of it. And she basically has moments of self-destruction. She did that when she did the national anthem at the Padres game. I don't know if you've ever heard that version of the national anthem. I should probably play it for you. But I think I'll spare you because it's horrible. And she was doing a parody, and she was mocking the national anthem and baseball in the country. And it was really weird because at that time, she had an ownership stake in the San Diego Padres, which is where so it was like, that's where she sang the national anthem. And she was horrible. And she grabbed her crotch. And I mean, it was like, know your audience. I think that was through the Werners. I think the Werners were owning the Padres at the time. Maybe they still do. I don't know. I don't keep up with that stuff too much anymore. But if you're like a really freedom-loving, patriot, MAGA person, go back and watch that video. Now, can people change? Yeah, sure they can change. But clearly she had contempt, absolute contempt for the national anthem, for the country, for the sport of baseball, and everybody in attendance. She spit on them. And that was kind of the demise of her show, to be honest with you. Once people kind of caught that act, the ratings started to plummet, and eventually they canceled the show. And then where did she go for a long time? She went to Hawaii. And I remember watching the show. It was like some reality show. Maybe it was on VH1 or something. And it was kind of patently bizarre in some ways. I mean, you can tell, like, there's a side. I mean, I feel like Roseanne is split. I feel like she has a split personality. I've got her chart up here. Let me just take a quick peek at her chart. Because there's some interesting things that happened with both her and Tommy Robinson, astrologically. Roseanne Barr has, she's an Aquarius rising, so of course she's going to be rebellious. And she's going to have things that are going to happen along the way, out of the blue, which will disrupt her life circumstances. Hello. And she has, let me see, where's her moon? She has moon in Gemini. There's a split. And it's opposed Mercury. She's got a moon-Mercury opposition, and she has a wide moon midheaven opposition. There's her split right there. Not everybody has moon in Gemini is split, but I'm telling you, if you look at people who are Geminis, they tend to have more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? More of a potential to be programmed than other signs. Look at Angelina Jolie, the Olsen twins, Britney Spears, Marilyn Monroe, whose birthday it is today. All Geminis and all pretty much programmed. Am I right? I think Brooke Shields' birthday is today too. I have to check that out. Make sure. But that's the Gemini. That's the Gemini effect. That's the butterfly effect. So she has it in her chart. It makes her more susceptible to being split. So I believe she is split. Interesting chart. She's got Mars in the 12th house. That's hidden enemies. And then she has Uranus. She's got a Uranus-Mars opposition. Uranus in the 6th house. That's open enemies. Yeah. Interesting, huh? And when she decided to have her little moment of truth, the full moon was on her Mercury in Sagittarius. See how astrology works? Tommy Robinson he's a 4-degree Sag. So this is interesting from an astrological perspective. Tommy Robinson's sun in 4-degree Sag was conjunct Roseanne Barr's Mercury in Sag. 4 degrees, 3 degrees, and then the full moon in Sag right on both. Interesting, huh? Freedom of speech is an issue. They are ciphers, but they are ciphers. They are accidental ciphers. They're accidental ciphers. And Tommy Robinson and Roseanne, again, represent this need in our culture to have representation on an external level. And I get it. I totally get it. Because do our politicians represent us? Like, I'll never forget when John McCain was running for president, people were calling him a maverick. Are you fucking kidding me? John McCain is as much of a maverick as I am a multi-billionaire. But that's who people had vested their time and energy and spirit into. I've talked about this before. I did the same thing with Ron Paul. I thought, okay, finally, here's somebody that's actually speaking truth to some very important issues. And I also really like Dennis Kucinich. I still think Dennis and Ron should have had a ticket together and run independently. The problem with both Dennis and Ron is they look like characters from Lord of the Rings, and not in a good way. Both super smart. Both have some care involved, and I do think Ron Paul cares. Whether or not he's a Mason, and he's a Mason. Ron Paul's a Mason. But Ron Paul, and I talked about this before, Ron Paul got everybody excited and lathered up, and he was a truth fluffer. Ron Paul was a truth fluffer. And then poof, he was gone. With all that money bomb. Ron Paul revolutionized money raising, by the way. He was like the first person to really take advantage of crowdfunding, crowdsourcing. It was on the internet, right? 2008. It was a big deal. Nobody had really done it before. Ron Paul and his son-in-law or whatever, they blazed that trail. But once I saw what was going on, I was like, why is he doing this? Why is he not spending this money to go back and really deal with his vote count stuff? Then, of course, the media wouldn't pay any attention to him. Unlike Donald Trump, by the way. You have to ask yourself that question. Why did the media allow and give Donald Trump so much time? Well, there's a reason for it, right? He had a TV show, reality show, so he's kind of one of their own in a lot of ways. And Trump Ron Paul for all of his great qualities and capacities of being smart and truthful or whatever, he's not a whole lot to look at. And while Trump has gotten progressively more unusual looking as he's gotten older, he still has a bit more of a telegenic quality than Ron Paul. And telegenics matter. Rarely do we elect ugly presidents. Barack Obama was a handsome guy. I'm not a fan. But surface, tall, right? Suits look good on him. That haircut with all the strange scars on the head, that's a whole other story. George Bush, he wasn't like drop dead gorgeous, but he certainly wasn't ugly, at least on the outside. So we tend to elect people that are telegenic. So Ron Paul never stood that chance. But once I saw what was going on, I'm like, okay, I get it. I totally get it. Like in his own way, Ron Paul was a limited hang. And when he ran again 4 years later, 2012, I had no interest. None whatsoever. Nope. None. Did he run in 2012? I know he ran in 2008. 2008 and 2004, right? Those were, let's see, 2004. That was 2008. That's when Bush. So it was 2008, 2012 with Ron Paul. 2008 was the biggie. That was the biggie. I remember when Dennis Kucinich was running on the Democratic side, and I've told this story before. I was backstage at a big festival in Santa Rosa, and Kucinich was there. And he spoke. And as he came off the stage, I was standing there waiting for him. And I shook his hand, and I said, look, if you're elected president, what are you going to do about these chemtrails? He answered my question. And he basically acknowledged that chemtrails are real and they're making people sick. And he had this air safety bill that he was trying to get through. I don't think it ever got through, which was going to require that the jets actually disclose what they put in their fuel. I like Dennis. But we vest our energy and our attention into these people that we think are going to represent us because we don't have any representation. And when somebody comes along and for even a brief period of time, if they pass the smell test, we're like just all in, like good, please go. That's why Trump has been so successful. He's kind of a lesser version of it. Like if you're really paying attention, like really, really paying attention, he's definitely a lesser version of that. But that's what people are looking for. People are looking for somebody to emerge so that they can represent their ideas, they can address their frustration, and they can speak truth to power. And this is why somebody like Roseanne or even Tommy Robinson can exist and do exist for a brief period of time. Because that's what we want. And I don't think it's necessarily wrong. Because like I said, we've been in the wilderness for a very long time. And we're coming out of the wilderness. We want to sit down and have that great meal. Well, that great meal starts with you. Bringing it back, a great meal starts with you. Your relationship to what's going on in your life. What you feed yourself. You know, are you feeding yourself low-hanging fruit? Or are you waiting for something juicier to drop down from heaven above? Or can you get up that tree and grab it yourself? I mean, there's a lot of metaphors here. So I would say that Tommy Robinson and Roseanne are accidental ciphers, especially based on their chart. It's funny with Tommy Robinson's chart, he's got that Sun-Uranus conjunction in Sagittarius, which is the same conjunction that Trump has. But in a different sign. And I think that that's what people are picking up on. They want that Uranian burst of radical disruption and a break from the past. And even Tommy Robinson has that version kind of in his chart. But he's reckless. He's totally reckless. The Sun, Uranus, Mercury conjunction in Sag. Look out. So we've got to. I just feel like we got to bring it all home. I got a real interesting comment yesterday from Christopher. He came and listened to the podcast and left a comment on the podcast. And he basically said, I'm done with all this bullshit. I'm done arguing on Twitter. I'm done, with the QAnon stuff. And it's like, good. So Christopher is having a golden moment. And I share it with him, right? I mean, will I continue at some point? Yes. To kind of pull back the veil to the best of my ability? Yes. And that will be in a new format. And that's going to happen in July. I'm going to have a 15 Minutes of Flame website. I've got to separate some things out. Sometimes I'll cross over, but it's definitely going to be 15 Minutes of Flame and then the astrology stuff and a bridge every now and then between the two. But it will be, that's part of what I'm doing. I've got to reorg my YouTube page and do a bunch of different stuff, which is part of the reason why I'm going to be shutting down the dailies, with the exception of the Friday Forecast, until right around the 23rd of July, right around there. 23rd of July is a Monday. That'll be a good day to launch this stuff back up. But again, it's all about the externalization. But now it's about free speech. I think free speech is really, really important. I think, but it's interesting though, right? I mean, it's totally interesting. People think, wow, this really shows you where free speech is now. Free speech is dead. Sorry. Roseanne is not like, she's not the John the Baptist of the moment in terms of free speech. I'll walk you right back into the 1980s. Actually, it would be like late 80s, early 90s, 89, 90, right around there. There's a group called Public Enemy. Some of you might remember that group. And Public Enemy had a guy by the name of Rick Griffin, also known as Professor Griff. He was the Minister of Information. Smart guy. He's actually been on Alex Jones a few times. So when Alex Jones had interesting guests. Now Alex Jones is just part of this. God, he's part of this whitewash. Right? And the whitewash is all about kind of the, it's the Zionist bait and switch game. Professor Griff said that the music industry was run by the Jews. That's what he said. Look at who, I'm sorry, but is that not truth? Is that not truth? Look at the stats. Look at who runs the major record companies, who owns them, who runs them. Hello? I mean, Rick Griffin is not saying anything there's a large number of the Jewish population that runs the record business. Was he saying something that was wrong in terms of its validity? No, he wasn't. But what happened to Mr. Griffin is that he said the wrong thing. It was like, boom, you can't say that. Well, guess what? He had to leave Public Enemy. His own group. So for the group to continue to create records, and by the way, Public Enemy was done not long after that. That's actually a really interesting conversation. I talked to a guy. I miss traveling to Europe, I got to say. Because those long flights, I would sit next to people that were really interesting. One time I sat next to this young guy from Berkeley. And he had a hip-hop show on KPFA. And he was going to some conference. And this guy, this is back in the days when people actually had CDs, okay? So we're talking, 2000, 2001, right around there. And I was headed to Germany for a music conference. And he's sitting next to me. And he had a big binder of all these hip-hop CDs and mixes and mashups and all kinds of. We sat down and we got down. We talked. We talked about hip-hop and a lot of stuff. And he confirmed, because he was This guy was kind of a deep cultural insider. And he confirmed what I had heard was that there was a conversation that was held inside the music industry at a high level. And there were two types of, at that time, hip-hop emerging. One was the Public Enemy style hip-hop, which was kind of coming out of it was like a conscious hip-hop movement coming out of New York City, kind of pioneered slightly by the likes of Africa Bambaataa. You had groups like the Poor Righteous Teachers, Public Enemy. There was this kind of political consciousness undercurrent that was starting to emerge in hip-hop. Public Enemy's best record, no doubt, Fear of a Black Planet, was the height of their popularity. On the West Coast, another group was emerging. That group was called NWA. And, NWA, who were a bunch of posers, by the way. NWA started off as a group making semi-political statements about the black experience in Compton. They would go in a different direction. And it would be much more visceral and much more violent. So what we saw with NWA was the birth of what's called gangster rap. So you had two versions of like where hip hop was going. It was either going to be the Public Enemy version or it was going to be the NWA version. And these guys sat down. The record industry guys, it's not like, Arista, Columbia, Warner's. Are they in competition with one another? Yes, they are. But are they also in collaboration with one another for the betterment of the industry? Yes, they are. Are there potentially nefarious motives behind their decisions? Yes, there are. Most of them have to do with control, and most of them have to do with the shaping, mutating, and the distortion of cultural values. Again, that brings us right back to the Laurel Canyon. Now, we went from that kind of decision-making process because there was a decision. They said, we're going to throw down and we're going to go with NWA and we're going to go with everything that's going to be NWA related. This is going to be an industry effort. We're going to create an industry front and we're going to make a lot of money off of it. And we're going to, instead of creating and promoting hip-hop that would raise the cultural standards of the black community, we're going to promote a type of hip-hop which will not necessarily do that. Instead of really promoting consciousness, intellectual thought, the truth, we're going to promote thug life. That's what happened. And that, at the same time, was synonymous with the rise of crack cocaine. It was all in the 90s. And the 90s were dark period. Pluto and Scorpio in the 90s, dark period. Big dark. 80s and 90s, mostly the 90s. Pluto went out of Scorpio in 96 into Sag, but the darkness was already in motion. Right? I'm just giving you an insight how this stuff works. And Rick Griffin was a victim. He was a victim of saying something which, from a statistical standpoint, is not untrue. But from a cultural standpoint, is the third rail. Was he a victim of free speech? Clearly he was. That was the 90s. Now, all of a sudden, free speech is like, it's burned down the town hall because Roseanne decided to shoot her mouth off. And who knows? I mean, look, she's a Sag, and she's not a Sag, she's a Scorpio. It's got Venus and Sag or Mercury and Sag. And sometimes Sag people, and I've seen this before. I've hung out, one of my best friends in high school was a Sag. Great guy. Like one of these people in your life that you always remember. Indelible, right? Bang on your head. Couldn't hold his liquor for shit. But, you know, you catch him like in the first couple of drinks, he was really fun. By the fourth drink or so, it's not fun. But anyway, he was a Sag. And this guy was something else. And he had that Sag propensity for being up and positive and, you know, happy and, you know, that Sag kind of thing. But he would also, I'll give you an example. This is to me, this typifies Sag for him. So he was also a leader. Great guy. His name was Keith. He was a leader. I remember playing football. Keith was undersized, but when he hit, like there was a violence to him. The guy's a warrior. Like Keith was a real warrior. And when we graduated from high school, we all went our separate ways. He got a job with the city, and he got a job the city of San Jose, and he was a sewer rat. That's what he was. He'd go down to the sewers of San Jose and do all the sewer work. He loved it, absolutely loved it. Yeah, because it was almost like the guys on his crew were like, it was like an army. Like Keith would have been a great soldier. And he loved it. He absolutely loved going to the sewers. He loved his boys. Absolutely loved it. And something happened, and he wound up having to leave. But he told me he made friends with like Hell's Angels. You know, I mean, this was Keith. This is a Sagittarian kind of thing, right? He winds up going to another city and getting a job there, and all of a sudden, he saw something that was going on with the city and their public works and utilities. And it was both dangerous, putting people at risk and costing the city money. He became a whistleblower. He went after it. He went after the city. Who does this? Right? Who does this? Sagittarians will do this. They'll do it. Tommy Robinson, in his own way, kind of a whistleblower, right? Even though he's manipulated. That's Tommy's problem. He's manipulated. I do think Tommy Robinson does want to get to some kind of truth. He's a Sag. He has to. His issue, astrologically, is the Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Scorpio. Tommy likes power. Tommy likes money. And he's susceptible. And just like that story yesterday that I shared about Joe Strummer. By the way, the other part of that story about Joe Strummer, and you'll see it in that movie, The Future is Unwritten. Joe Strummer's brother, who was older, very quiet, he was at the other end of the spectrum. While Joe Strummer became an ass kicker in school, his brother was probably the one getting his ass kicked. Then his brother became a collector of Nazi memorabilia. And then guess what he did? Well, one day they found Joe Strummer's brother all dressed up in Nazi memorabilia, regalia. He'd taken a boat, I guess, out in the Thames or a lake somewhere in London. Taking a boat, and there was like a little island in the lake. You know how lakes have these little islands and stuff. And killed himself. That's the legacy of Joe Strummer's brother. Fell in love with fascism and killed himself. Anyway, so my friend took on the city, and he won. And he actually won a settlement with the city because then the city screwed him over. So there were two things, right? He took on the city, and the city screwed him over. And then he took on the city again because they screwed him over. And then he got a settlement. And he continued to do the public works stuff. But that's a Sagittarian thing. And they're lucky. Sagittarians are lucky. And they can do something really stupid and step in shit and sometimes have it work out for them. It's the nature of Sagittarius. And we had that full moon right on Roseanne's Mercury and right on Tommy Robinson's Sun in Sagittarius. Hello? There you go. So it'll be interesting how all this shakes out and goes down over the next few weeks and next few months. I don't believe that Roseanne Barr or Tommy Robinson are political heroes. And if they are, they're accidental at best. But we're in a time where even the deeply flawed appears to be virtuous, gallant, courageous amongst the rest of us. And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. That getting up every day on this planet is a heroic act. Because if you're really aware, if you're really woke, if you're really red-pilled, you're going to look at what's going on around here. And you're going to see that it's a pretty fucked up place. That's what's happening. People are waking up. Slowly, the sleeper's awake. And this is the most dangerous time. This is the most vulnerable time. Right? We are in the birth canal. So many things can go wrong. So remember that. Just keep that right in the forefront of your consciousness. So many things can go wrong. One of my favorite metaphors for birth has to do with the baby kangaroo. And the baby kangaroo is actually born as like this embryo almost, this kind of like, living, crawling, breathing embryo. And what the baby kangaroo has to do, it actually has to make its way up from the womb of the kangaroo and climb up its belly and then into the fold, into that little pouch. And that's where that baby kangaroo will live and begin to grow and gestate. Isn't that fascinating? A lot can happen. A lot can happen. I'm sure history is filled with little kangaroos that don't make that journey. Or what about the journey of the turtle, the sea tortoise? There are thousands of them. They're born, but their journey is a precarious one to the ocean. Some of them don't make it for any number of reasons. It could be a bird coming down. It could be a human. Who knows? It could be the fact that they're just not really equipped to make the journey. But that's a very vulnerable time for them to get to the ocean. It's a vulnerable time for the baby kangaroo to come up into the pouch. And we're in that time. This is a vulnerable time. And so we have these deflectors, these people that want to move us along with those flags. Go over here, go over here, go over here. And keep us riled up. Now, it's almost Friday, and we got a weekend ahead of us. I really think, ultimately, things are going to get better. But they're not going to get better before they get more more split. I gotta people send me the best emails. And Murray Hill, who has been a contributor to the website, and I got a couple of pieces I'm sitting on with Murray. I wanted to read you something from Murray's email. I just have to find it here. Where is he? Here he is. So Murray and I, we communicate. And this is what he shared with me. And I do believe that what he says has a lot of truth. This is what Murray says. He says, well, it appears we are now into the first and early stages of the big split. The separation between the two poles. Time to choose, inside the system or outside the system. A few will choose, most will be corralled. It is all very sad, and much suffering will be the result. There is, of course, the option of creating an alternative space to inhabit. This requires imagination, creativity, and artistry, and maybe a little luck. I believe it is doable, that it is essential for as many as possible to do it, to remain sane. Sanity will become a real collective issue soon. A few more little pushes and the collective can be given the psychic wobbles. I was reading an article about human population genetics today. We come from a group of under 20,000 individuals, perhaps less. Isn't it wonderful that the population of a small town became 7 million plus. Happy days. I think Murray is pretty clear and pretty on point with this, and that we are coming to the fork in the road. We are coming to the split because it's inevitable, and some of it will have to do with economics, Uranus and Taurus stuff. And there's going to be a time where you're going to have to choose. I'm not saying it's going to be this year or next year, but it won't be too far off in the future. You're going to have to choose. You have to choose what reality you want to live in. And some of it will be determined by how you're going to transact and be able to exchange theoretical money for goods. Just keep that in mind as well. So we're wrapping up here on the sort of the Tommy Robinson cycle. And basically, today is the last day of school here with the kids across the street from the school, and they're going on summer vacation. So I'm going to go on a bit of a summer vacation for myself as well. I will be back. I'm not going to do the Friday Farcast tomorrow. And I will not be doing it next week because I've got kind of a big appointment I've got to get to on Friday. It happens right around the same time. But I will be doing the Sunday night live stream over on YouTube on Sunday night. And then I'll be doing the Sunday night live stream again the following Sunday. So we got two live streams coming up. And the next Farcast I will do will be live from Solutions. And that's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where I'll be for about 10 days doing some teaching and doing some readings out there. And then we'll be coming back with the 15 minutes again on the 27th of August. And I'll have a new website, dedicated stuff, and it'll allow me to actually post some things that I would like to post that aren't always astrological. And I have to be able to do that sometimes. So that'll be over there. And then, of course, I'll have the astrology site. That'll be cranked up and ready to go. And that, too, in and of itself will be a bit different. But it'll still be astrology heavy, and it will still be with my content. So that's where we are with that. That's what that is. Okay, so listen, let me get in the chat room. We got about 10 snippets of conversation going on in there. Let's see if I can follow a few threads and what the heck's going on. 15 minutes of flame, our breakfast of champions. That's funny. That's Steve. Ali, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Logos Sylvia, how are you? I never watched Magnum P.I., and you know why. I do know why, Lynn. That's very, very personal. Good. Bring in the astrology. Gemini, the mind. Roseanne has Sun opposed Jupiter, and Jupiter has transited over her Sun, opposing that. That's true. Kaboom. That's right. Good call, Lynn. What else? Sag, open mouth, insert foot. First description I was given of Sag from learning astrology. I can relate with my Sag moon. Here we go. That's the nature of Sag. Absolutely. And then somehow they wind up dealing with it, being okay. That was the story of my friend Keith. He wound up always being okay. Somehow, he would screw up, and it would be, okay. Like Keith Richard. Great example of Keith Richard, right? Sagittarius. What happens? Well, he got busted. He got busted for pot and did some stuff, more than busted for pot, but he got busted. And he went out and did a fundraiser, and he put together a band called the New Barbarians. Basically him and Stanley Clark on bass and a couple of guys from the Meters. And he went out and sold out auditoriums all across North America and had people, giving money to this, I guess it was normal. Was it normal, I guess? I'm not sure. But he gets busted, and he winds up turning it into a very successful concert tour. outside the stones. It's kind of a Sagittarian thing, right? Okay, so hang in there, stay strong, and begin to create, today, this weekend, whatever. Begin to create, your it sounds solipsistic, but your reality. Even if it's a very, very small thing, and even if you're limited in what you can do something to make your life better, make other people's lives better, and continue to uncover what the truth is in your life and in the life of other people, other folks. So I'm going to get on out of here, and I'll be back on Sunday night with the live stream, and I'll be back in 2 weeks with 15 Minutes of Flame. And we're going to be doing 15 Minutes of Flame every Friday thereafter. The Sunday night live streams with, Friday Farcast every 2 weeks. Friday Farcast every week, starting 2 weeks out. And then the Sunday night live streams and 15 Minutes of Flame popping up again on the 23rd of July, which is a Monday. We're going to crank that back up again. In the meantime, I'll be doing some traveling and some website building, some reorganization. And we're going to put this thing back together. And my goal here really is to begin to create more community. Because there are a lot of disparate sort of threads. And I'd like for us to have more of a place where we can kind of congregate. And the idea is to create a, message board and, more of a sense of people really connecting and trying to bridge that gap of isolation between us. That's part of the new plan on this side of things, just to let you know. Wow. Here we are. Back in time. It almost feels like a parody in some ways. May 31st. Here we go. Today is 151st day of the year. We have 214 days left. Back in 455, Emperor Petronius Maximus is stoned to death by an angry mob while fleeing Rome. Maybe you should bring back stonings. Maybe stoning should make a comeback. I mean, think of it. It's not guns. What are you going to do, ban stones? I thought we were headed in that direction when that Iraqi guy threw the shoe at George Bush. I thought maybe that it would kind of degrade to stones. Remember there was a period, there was that pie period too, where people were pieing people in the face in public, pies and shoes. Maybe stoning. Maybe the Uranus and Taurus stoning will make a comeback. It's a very Taurus kind of thing, don't you think? 1223, the Mongol invasion of the Kumans, Battle of the Kalka River, the Mongol armies of Genghis Khan, led by Subutai, defeat Kievan Rus and the Kumans. Speaking of stones, today's I guess a good day in stone history. In 1578, King Henry III lays the first stone of the Pont Neuf, the new bridge, the oldest bridge of Paris in France. That first stone was laid today. Could you imagine that? Dear King, here's the first stone. It probably had it on a pillow, right? He sat down and put that little stone, and everybody clapped their hands. A sad day in the history of Samuel Pepys. Citing poor eyesight, Samuel Pepys records the last event in his diary. Oh, let's see. Ooh. It's a very Gemini kind of thing here. 1790, the United States enacts its first copyright statute, Copyright Act of 1790. 1795, speaking of the French Revolution, the Revolutionary Tribunal is suppressed on this day, 1795. 1805, French and Spanish forces begin the assault against British forces occupying Diamond Rock. Back in 1859, the clock tower at the Houses of Parliament, which houses Big Ben, starts keeping time. Well, if that's the case, then, this is officially the day that, time started. What else we have here? 1879, bet you didn't know this. Gilmore's Garden in New York City is renamed Madison Square Garden. And of course, it was built by renamed by William Henry Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt, of course, is the family that Anderson Cooper comes from. He's a Vanderbilt. That's right. Let's see. This is the day of the big Johnstown flood. Speaking of flood, boy, our friends in the Southeast are going through it, aren't they? I got people saying on Facebook that they're okay. Holy shit. Weird weather. Uranus and Taurus. Today's the day of the Johnstown flood. Big flood. Huge. Over 2,200 people, of course it's 22, over 2,200 people die after a dam falls and sends a 60-foot wall of water over the town of Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Could you imagine seeing that thing? 60 feet is pretty damn big. You're just looking at this 60-foot wave coming at you. Holy shit. Let's see. Here we go. Back in 1909, the National Negro Committee, forerunner of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, convenes for the very first time. Ironically, 1 year later, the South Africa Act comes into force, establishing the Union of South Africa. Well, that's kind of a Gemini sort of moment now, isn't it? On this day in 1911, the Titanic is launched in Belfast, Northern Ireland. How about that? Back in 1921, on this day, speaking of duality in black and white, the Tulsa race riot kills at least 39, but other estimates of black fatalities vary from 55 to about 300. 1927, this is the day the very last Model T rolled off assembly lines. That was the last of 15,703,000 Model Ts that were made. Another big day in earthquake history, back in 1935, a 7.7 earthquake destroys Quetta in modern-day Pakistan, killed 40,000 people. Holy smokes. 1941, the Anglo-Iraqi War. The United Kingdom completes the reoccupation of Iraq and returns Abd al-Ilah to power as regent for Faisal II. It was all about oil, by the way. Let's see what we have here. 1961, the South African Constitution becomes effective. So May 31st, a big day for the former, I guess it's still South Africa, right? Let's see what else we have here. Another earthquake, 1970. This one's a 7.9. It is the Ancash earthquake, and it shook Peru with a maximum Mercalli intensity of 8, which is severe. Between 66,000 and 70,000 people were killed. 50,000 people were injured on this day. Another big earthquake day. The kids are like right now, celebrating across the street. It's the last day of school. How cool is that? Let's see. The United States votes to cut off funding for the bombing of the Khmer Rouge targets within Cambodia, hastening the end of the Cambodian Civil War. Well, that's because once they stopped the bombing, then the Khmer Rouge was able to come down into Cambodia. Pol Pot, one of the great psychopaths and mass murderers of the 20th century and any century, came in and slaughtered the Cambodians. The United States was nowhere to be found. Great film, Swimming to Cambodia. Check it out. Let's see what else. 1977, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline is completed. Back in 1985, 41 tornadoes hit Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and Ontario, leaving 76 dead. This is a big weather day. Keep your eyes on the weather. Back in 2005, it was revealed that Mark Felt was Deep Throat. Vanity Fair did it. And last year, a car bomb exploded in a crowded intersection in Kabul near the German embassy during rush hour, killing over 90 and injuring 463 people. And what about birthdays? Any interesting birthdays today? Let's find out. I think there's a few. Clint Eastwood's birthdays today. I love Clint Eastwood. I think he's great. But like anybody else in Hollywood, Clint had to do things to get his roles, especially early on, if you know what I'm saying. Let's see. Today is the birthday of Norman Vincent Peale, who was one of the spiritual teachers of one Donald John Trump. In fact, married Donald John Trump with Ivanka. Yes, he was the presiding minister. Let's see. Don Amici. Today's his birthday. Born today. The English actor Denholm Elliott, who passed away in 1992. I didn't realize Denholm Elliott had been gone that long. Wow. Interesting. Clint Eastwood, 1930, born on this day. Of course, we mentioned him. Who else? Johnny Paycheck. Take this job and shove it. But those are the good old days, right? When you could say, take this job and shove it because I got another job waiting. Not so much anymore. Now, today, it's take this job or shove it. Right? There you go. Let's see. Today's Peter Yarrow's birthday, from Peter, Paul, and Mary. By the way, another MK Ultra group in front. Not a lot has been done in the folk movement as a manufactured movement, but clearly it is there. How the kids are blowing bubbles on their last day of school. Isn't it great watching kids run after bubbles and try and pop the bubbles? That's one of the coolest things. Let's see what else we have here. Joe Namath, Broadway Joe. Happy birthday, Broadway Joe. Let's see. Isn't it? Marilyn Monroe's birthday was today. I thought she was. Hold on. Didn't I just see her name? Where is it? Today is the birthday of Rainer Werner Fassbinder, the very controversial German actor, director, and screenwriter. If you want to see Fassbinder's best work, World on a Wire, which is a precursor to The Matrix. Very, very interesting movie. Talk about layering reality. Let's see who else. I thought today was Marilyn Monroe's birthday. Boy, I was wrong. I was wrong. Today is Walt Whitman's birthday. I knew that. One of my favorite poets. How can you not like Walt Whitman? Leaves the Grass, Song of Myself. John Bonham, Led Zeppelin. Today is his birthday. Oh, let's see. Anybody else mildly interesting? Viktor Orban, the Hungarian politician, Prime Minister of Hungary. Today's his birthday. Wesley Willis died in 2003. Wesley Willis is one of these guys. Like, there was this whole kind of strange genre of music back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. It was like naive pop, or people who had actual like either Asperger's or autism, whose mental health was like slightly, hanging in the balance. There was a whole genre of that music that was kind of popular. And Wesley Willis was one of them. He did all these songs about McDonald's. Brooke Shields, there we go. Today is Brooke Shields' birthday, 1965. See, I knew I got that right. Anybody else mildly interesting? I think that's it. The newer people aren't always that interesting. At least not yet. Maybe over time they will be. Maybe some. Colin Farrell, today's his birthday as well. There we go. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, all you people who are still alive on this day, May 31st. And happy birthday to Tova. My dear Tova in San Francisco. I wish you a happy birthday offline, but happy birthday to you. And let's get on out of here. Let me check a few more comments. Stoning isn't working too well in Palestine. Yeah, you're right. I hear Jasper. Yeah, stoning isn't working too well in Palestine. It's true. But it's all about context. That was not Jasper, by the way. That was Jasper's. Okay. So I will be back on Sunday night with the 11th House live stream over on YouTube. We'll be getting down into some astrology. Maybe we'll break down Tommy Robinson and Roseanne's charts on Sunday night. If you want to go a little bit further with that, I'd be happy to do that. And we can look at the full moon effect, which I think is really, really fascinating to observe with these two charts, especially how timely it was for them, and then popping into sort of the public view and the public awareness. So use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I'll be back on Sunday night.
You're listening to 15 Minutes of Flame with Robert Phoenix.